Good day, everyone. Today, the topic that we are going to discuss is all about language variety. It is a very interesting topic to deal with because we all know that our country is very rich in different languages. To begin with our discussion, let us now call on our first reporter to give us more knowledge about language variation.
A pleasant day, everyone. Our topic for today is about the variety of language. In the variety of language, we have language variation. Number one, language as communication. It is how we talk and express ourselves or how we communicate and relate ourselves to other people. Additionally, language connects people. Number two, language as uniting or dividing. Sometimes language bring us together and other times it create differences. So for example, language unite when people from diverse background communicate and share ideas, fostering understanding and collaboration. And it is dividing naman, when miscommunication or language barriers lead to misunderstanding and then forcing cultural differences and hindering cooperation. So that is how dividing naman. Next is language is active and changing. It is always evolving. Which is true because nowadays we use terms that we don't have naman talaga noon or we used to create different terms sa mga lengguwahe natin. Like for example, yung binabaliktad natin yung mga words. For example, sa idol, nagiging lodi. Sa tara, nagiging arat na, ganon. So, yun, it is always evolving. Next is the varieties of language. Language varies based on region, social factor, and context. Now we have two varieties of language, which is the interspeaker variation and the intraspeaker variation. In this interspeaker variation, it says here that it is just the difference between language, dialect, and the speaker. So yun lang yung pagkakaiba nyo sa mga lengguwahe, sa dialect, sa way ng pananalita, the way of speaking, pronunciation, and the speaker. For example, Tagalog and Cebuano speaker, right? They have different language, they have different dialect, pronunciation, the way of speaking, and they are a different speaker. Next is the intra-speaker variation. It changes within a single speaker. So, for example, shifting to formal to informal speech. So, example nito is when you're speaking to your friend, you use casual or informal way of speaking. But when you are speaking to a higher person or have a higher status like your teacher, supervisor, or your parents, you use formal, but parents nga pala sometimes casual. But sa mga school matters or sa mga office matters, we use formal language.
The importance of variation. Variation is a characteristic of language. Language varies in terms of pronunciation, word choice, or grammatical patterns. Language varies in terms of pronunciation. For example, the English accents in Manila versus Cebu are the difference in the way some of the Cebuanos pronounce the Tagalog words. And when it comes to the importance of accents or the way people correctly pronounce words, it will help to have better communication with other people. Others will hear and understand you more clearly. The second is the word choice or lexicon. The use of language varies in terms of word choice. For example, the way we Filipinos use the word jeepney differs from the word choice of bus in the US or of the Americans, or the way that two people have the same thoughts but differ in the words they use to express the thoughts. When speaking or writing, word choice is crucial because it enables us to express ideas effectively and in ways that are acceptable for the structure and context of a sentence. And the last is that languages vary in terms of grammatical patterns. According to Huntston and Francis 1999, grammar patterns are defined as all the words and structures that are regularly associated with the word and that contribute to its meaning. Grammar is a crucial part of language. Through grammar, humans have the capacity for self-expression and enables us to understand others in such a way that grammar plays a crucial role in our lives.
Today, everyone, I discuss the types of variation. Before we discuss what is variation. Variation is typically the vehicle of language change. In simple terms, variation means differences or changes. When it comes to language, variation is usually how language changes over time. It's like a vehicle that carries language from one form to another. So, if language is a car, variation is the engine that drives it forward and makes it different from before. Let's move the types of variation. The first list, um, the regional variation. This means that people from different regions or places may use language differently. For example, Bisaya spoken in Visayas may have different vocabulary or pronunciation that Bisaya spoken in other regions. Second, occupational variation. This means that people in different professions or jobs may use language differently. For example, medical professionals may use specific terms that are not commonly used by others. Third, sexual variation. This means that men and women may use language differently. For example, there may be differences in language used between gender in terms of vocabulary, tone, or intonation. Fourth, educational variation. This means that people with different level or of education may use language differently. For example, academic language used in universities may be different from everyday language. Second to the last, age variation. This means that people from different age group may use language differently. For example, slang used by teenager might be different from the language used by older generation. Lastly, social context variation. This means that people may use language differently depending on the social settings or situation. For example, the language used in formal business settings may be different from the language used in casual social gatherings. So, yun lang po yung types of variation. Thank you.
Variation is typically the vehicle of language change. And for the topics of language variation, we have here standard language, national language, dialect, register, pidgin, Creole, classical language, lingua franca, diglosia, and style. And to discuss the standard language and national language, let us now call the next reporter.
Okay, for the topics of language variation, first of all, we have the standard language used in government, media, schools, and international communication. It has varieties of Filipino, Tagalog, and regional languages. So, for the standard language, it refers to a formalized and widely accepted set of linguistic convention used within a particular community or region. In the Philippines, Filipino based on Tagalog serve as a standard language. For example, official documents and news broadcasts predominantly use Filipino to ensure clear communication across diverse linguistic communities in the country. And for our second one, we have the national language or the official language. A national language refers to an official or commonly spoken language recognized and used by the country or the administration purposes. It is primary language that is designated to a country and preferred source of communication at every level and often holds cultural and historical significance of a nation. Example, in the Philippines, our national language is Tagalog. In Korea, they have the Hangul. In China, they have the standard Mandarin. And lastly, Thailand, they have the Thai language. And that will be all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elvira. And aside from standard languages and national language and language variation, we also have here dialect. So what is dialect? As a type of language variation, dialect encompasses differences in grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation within a language. Seen through dialects existing on regional, minority, social, and individual levels. And here in our country, in the Philippines, there are numerous dialects. We all know that. And these are Tagalog, Cebuano, Ilocano, Hiligaynon, and Waray, and many more. And This exhibit distinct variation in grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation across different regions or based on different places because we are rich in linguistic diversity within our country. And these dialects often originate from historical, geographical, and cultural influences, shaping our unique linguistic identities among various communities and countries. Aside from dialect, we also have your register. When we talk about register language, it involves different styles of language based on formality, occasion, and medium. And here in our country, in the Philippines, the use of register language is prominent across various contexts. For example, informal setting or situation like academic or professional environments, Filipinos most often employ formal registers language using respectful terms or titles like using po and opo for politeness, especially when we are speaking to elders or those in authority. Otherwise, informal situation or casual conversations among peers, a more relaxed and colloquial register language is used. And moreover, different professions and fields have their specific jargon or technical term. For example, lawyers might use legal terminology, and medical practitioners have their medical jargon. And those in the technological industry have their specialized language, creating distinct registers within these professions. And adjusting the degree of formality based on the setting is a common practice showing adaptability in communication across various social contexts in the Philippines. Therefore, when we talk about register language, it refers to the different styles or variation of language that are determined by factors such as formality, occasion, and the context in which communication occurs. And now, let's talk about pidgin. In the Philippines, the examples of the pidgin language are Bekimon, Senachete, Kaderder, or Chariz, which emerged within the LGBTQ plus community. It's a fusion of Filipino or Tagalog and English and other languages, incorporating a unique vocabulary and modified syntax. For example, Beckman is used primarily within specific social group, allowing for communication and expression among its members, and incorporating elements from various languages to create a distinct and comprehensible form of communication within their community. While pidgin language like Senechete are not official or widespread, they serve as means of communication in a specific social context among individuals who speak different primary languages. On the other hand, when we talk about pidgin is a simplified form of language that develops as a means of communication between people who speak different native languages. It is typically arises in situations where there is a need for basic communication between speakers of different language, such as in trade or multicultural setting. Pidgin language often have simplified grammar and vocabulary, illustrating elements from multiple languages and are used for limited and specific purposes or contexts only. And now, let's talk about Creole. Creole languages are typically born from a blend of languages, often emerging in situations where people from different linguistic backgrounds need to communicate. When a simplified pidgin language becomes more complex and serves as the native tongue for a community, it evolves into a Creole, and Creole often borrow vocabulary and structure from multiple languages, creating a new and distinct language that becomes the primary means of communication for its speaker. And in the Philippines, here, one example of Creole language is Chabacano. Chabacano is originated from Spanish but evolved into a Creole with influences from various Philippines language, and it's primarily spoken in areas like Zamboanga City and Cavite. Chabacano is unique as it developed from Spanish but adopted to the local context, becoming a distinct Creole language spoken as the first language by many individuals in this or in those regions. And now, let's talk about classical language ancient or language with rich literature. In the Philippines, one example of a classical language is Sanskrit. While it is not indigenous to the Philippines. Sanskrit has had a historical influence on Filipino culture and language, particularly on ancient scripts and literature. Sanskrit was used in inscriptions found in artifacts and ancient documents in the Philippines, demonstrating its role as a classical language that contributed to the region's literary and cultural heritage. These ancient texts and inscriptions reflect the impact of Sanskrit on early Philippines civilization. And even though it is not a native language of the archipelago, again, Sanskrit is not native to the Philippines. It is originated in ancient India and it is an Indo-European language. However, Sanskrit had historical influence and was used in ancient inscriptions and texts found in the Philippines also, showcasing its impact on the region's early literature and culture or cultural heritage. And now, let's talk about lingua franca. Again, here in our country, the Philippines, English and Filipino often function as our lingua francas. English serves as a significant lingua franca for many Filipinos, especially in business, education, and international communication. It is used as a common language among people with different native languages or dialects to facilitate understanding and communication. On the other hand, Filipino or Tagalog is the national language of our country or here in our country. It is also used as a lingua franca, allowing speakers of various regional dialect across the Philippines to communicate effectively. And these two language, English and Filipino, act as a bridges between diverse linguistic backgrounds within the country, enabling broader communication and comprehension among Filipinos. And now let's talk about diglossia. Diglossia refers to a linguistic situation where two varieties of a language exist within a community or society, each with specific functions and roles. One variety, often referred to as the high variety. It is used in formal or prestigious contexts such as literature, education, or formal speeches. This high variety is typically associated with the written form of the language, and it is considered the standard or prestigious dialect. And the other variety term is low variety. It is used in everyday or informal communication among the community. And in diglossic societies, there's a clear separation between these varieties and each serving distinct purpose within the social context. And this phenomenon allow for specialized functions of language while maintaining a clear distinction between formal and informal registers. For example, here in our country, the Philippines, a diglossia situation exists between Filipino and English. Filipino, being the national language, is often the high variety used in formal contexts and education, literature, and official communication. It is the language taught in school and used in official documents. However, English serves as another high variety widely used in business, higher education, and formal setting. It is often associated with prestige and used in legal documents, scientific, and international contexts. And the low varieties would be the various regional languages and dialects spoken across the island, used informally in daily conversation and community interactions. This diglossic setup allows for the use of different languages in various social contexts within the Philippines or within our country. Lastly, we have style. When we talk about style in language, it refers to the particular way language is used or presented based on the formality or informality of a situation. It involves adapting speech or writing to suit a specific context, audiences, or purposes. And formal styles adhere to established grammar rules or use vocabulary and maintain a more structured tone. They are commonly found in academic writing, professional setting, or official communications. And in contrast, informal styles naman are more relaxed and using colloquial expressions or everyday language and the tone suited for casual conversations or interactions among friends, family, or peers. And the choice of style depends on the social setting, the relationship between speakers or writers, and the desired level of formality or informality in communication. And here in our country, one of the example of formal languages styles can be observed in official government documents or legal proceedings or legal documents, academic papers, and professional settings such as business meetings. And this context often require adherence to grammatical rules, as what I mentioned earlier, and specific terminology, and a structured tone. While informal language styles here in our country are commonly found in casual conversations among friends, family, gatherings, and interaction within local communities. People tend to use colloquial expressions, regional dialects, and relaxed speech patterns in these settings. And moreover, media platforms like social media and online forums often showcase a blend of both formal and informal styles, depending on the nature of the discussion or the intended audience. Formality might vary based on the topic being discussed or the level of professionalism expected with those or within those platforms. I think that's all our report for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you've learned a lot. Thank you.